What's up guys, and welcome back. We have another awesome Switch 2 video today. We have a lot to discuss and my thoughts on the console so far. I'm not really set on a score per se for review of the console yet. There's more to basically do with it and test out other games as well, but I'm going to share some very interesting things I discovered with Cyberpunk 2077, the Switch 2 itself, in fact with certain resolutions that are not available like 1440p, which actually are available to you to use in games like Cyberpunk 2077. It's kind of interesting how that works, but there is some issues as well with the game and with HDR and other things as well, but we will talk about that. But first of all, we're going to discuss a very strange and kind of odd thing that's going on in the community with gaming and Switch 2 and the Xbox and PlayStation communities, including PC as well. This didn't happen at all with Switch 1, and that was the narrative stuff going on with people coming in and basically saying how unimpressive or how bad Switch 2 looks compared to the other consoles, when in actuality Switch 2 actually looks better than some examples with Xbox Series S, like in Street Fighter 6 and Cyberpunk 2077 in image quality, textures, and whatnot. But it's all due to the graphics.
Get down!
I have a subdermal tracker. It needs to go ASAP.
Myers, get in! Wanna play rough? Gonna get rough.
Due to the graphics of the Switch 2 is what's causing this uproar of anger, so to speak, in the community about people enjoying playing the Switch 2. Now, I'm not going to give these people the light of day by showing their names or something on this video, but we are going to be talking about things that have been said by various different people, a lot of different things that are negative towards Switch 2. With this game, Cyberpunk 2077, I've been doing lots of tests. I have multiple new videos on my second channel, like short examples of graphical, the things that the Switch 2 is doing with Cyberpunk, like driving through the city at high speeds with, like without any slowdown or, basically no issues whatsoever. A lot of people were saying the game was having really bad frame rates, and I've shown on my channel and with this example here as well, that even with these large crazy fights, the Switch 2 is handling it pretty well. In fact, I was having quite a lot of fun playing this just the other night, doing these tests, because I was expecting the game to really chug, because the CPU is known to have a little bit less performance than an x86 CPU that's ARM based. But I gotta give the Switch 2 some credit here. It's doing quite a great job of handling a lot of NPCs, and these are all NPCs that are attacking you. They're not just NPCs that are kind of just walking around doing nothing. These are kind of smart. I would say kind of smart. Some of them are more dumb than others, but a lot of these police and robots, and then they gotta drive their cars and shoot their guns. They have to say certain lines, the insults to the character. They did a really great job of porting this to the Switch 2 by giving you the experience that you would expect to have from Cyberpunk 2077 in these types of combat encounters. You have your slow-mo abilities, you have your katana blade and swords that you can kind of block on and deflect all the attacks. This is a really good job here. Now granted, you're going to still have some frame drops, but I expected it to basically be like unplayable based upon what other people have kind of put out there on YouTube, saying, oh, it's hitting like 17 frames per second and all those kind of things. And the crazy thing about that is that a lot of these YouTube channels and are doing this because they need to have the clicks on their videos. I'm just being 100% honest with you guys. To get you to click on their video, they need to portray a certain narrative either one side or the other. It's either extremely positive or extremely negative. And by posting things in their thumbnail, like saying 17 frames per second, and putting that in the thumbnail for this game, you send out the wrong message, basically saying that this game runs at 17 frames per second or 20 frames per second on Switch 2 at all times. I've seen a lot of people actually say that. I've heard this game only runs at 17 frames per second. What's going on here? How come it's not running that low? How come it's running fine? Well, it's because it's getting a false narrative. That's what happens when you have a false narrative or put something out there that looks to be something else, to give people the impression that's performing a lot worse than what it is. Now, yes, you may have drops to that low at certain points in some extreme circumstances, but overall, it's not a consistent thing at all. In fact, on my channel, there's all the proof you need in my 12-hour day one stream of Switch 2. We played Cyberpunk 2077. Thank you, by the way, for coming out and hanging out with me for all those 12 hours. We played the game non-stop, and we went through all the open world stuff. We're driving motorcycles, cars, intense firefights and everything. There wasn't any frame rate issues whatsoever, and all the proof is right there on my channel. These videos that people put out there, they're like 10 minutes long. They show basically 5 or 6 or 7 seconds worth of poor frame rates that they've encountered in Cyberpunk, for example. But I have almost 12 hours straight playing the game, and you will not see frame rate drops like that basically at all during my entire play session. And it's a live playthrough of the game all the way up to where you get the Johnny joins you basically, and Keanu Reeves. So a long time of me playing the game live, and you can't program or script the footage to be a certain way when you're playing it live. You're literally playing the game live for the audience. So what happens on screen is going to be the first time it happens to you when you encounter something for the first time. It's going to be the first time that I see it as well, because I don't know how the game is going to perform. And I've never played it before on Switch 2. That was my first time playing it, and I was very impressed. I wasn't getting frame drops. It was performing really well. So when you see these videos out there saying that the Switch 2 version performs really poorly, and then they show you examples, that's why I have to kind of do my own videos. I do it myself, because I know, because I have over 40 hours in this game already on Switch 2. I have over 300 hours total for Cyberpunk 2077 if you combine my Steam and Switch 2 accounts now. But I put a ton of time in this game on Switch 2 already over the weekend, playing it non-stop. The Phantom Liberty DLC, Dogtown, and everything like that. Game runs fine. It really does, and I have all the footage to prove it as well. But but this is from my video here that I did for the example. But that's the thing, though. The issue that people are having that I'm not used to is them being critical of Nintendo because of a bias. They're a fanboy of PlayStation or Xbox. But I think you're seeing a lot more from Xbox than PlayStation, from what I've noticed. And some PC players, Steam Deck users, ROG Ally, Legion Go, those kind of accounts, they have been really negative, extremely negative on Switch 2. And take it from my perspective, I think it's actually a good thing that they're doing this, because what that means is that they're threatened by the Switch 2. And they did not act that way at all with Switch 1, because the Switch 1 wasn't competitive graphically. But now you're seeing Switch 2 actually look competitive with things like PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S, and PC even, some examples, Steam Deck. You're seeing things that Nintendo has never, actually done in a long time. And now you're seeing it, and people are getting angry, and they're getting threatened by the Switch 2, which is silly. You shouldn't be threatened by another console, but they are. I mean, that's just what immaturity is. And I responded to this on Twitter the other day. Somebody posted this little meme here about how people are saying, oh, I really like playing Switch 2, and then you have a really angry person. I hope something bad happens to you. I'm not going to say what it says here, but you get the point, right? So I said the funniest part is that it's almost solely based, all this hatred, it's almost solely based on Switch 2 having better graphics over Xbox Series S, let's just be honest, in some examples, and it comparing pretty decently to the PlayStation 5. The anger directed to people enjoying Switch 2 and its graphics is due to fanboy immaturity and insecurity. That's my opinion. Let me know what you think, but I saw some great examples of this. I saw plenty of lies about my content, even people saying completely opposite things of what I said in my videos to spin a narrative. And all my content's right there for people to watch. Anything that you hear people say online that I've said, feel free to please watch the video first before actually taking someone's word for it, because a lot of these guys are saying completely wrong things that I've never said. Like one guy even said that I claimed that the Steam Deck and Xbox Series S were equivalent to one another, and then I said that the Switch 2 is more powerful than Xbox Series S, and I've never said any of those things in my content at all. I've said things like comparable, and I've said things like it looks better than, you know what I mean, but not more powerful, because I know it's not more powerful. It's just not happening in a portable device. But can it look better graphically? Yes, it can, because that is the magic of things like DLSS, and it's already been proven. We've seen it firsthand. Steam Deck, yes, of course, we know it's already more powerful than Steam Deck. That's already been proven as well. So that kind of stuff's been going on. And then you have other lies and other narratives that are going on as well. Another funny one that I've seen, and it was here, actually, yeah. So someone posted a picture. Again, I won't say these people's names. They just want attention. We know that. But when you post, straight out lies or just spinning a narrative, that's what these people are really trying so hard to do. They want to make the Switch 2 look as bad as possible, and it's just failing miserably. And it's really pathetic, actually, but funny at the same time that they're doing these things and they're so desperate to make sure the Switch 2 looks the worst it possibly can. And so here we have this picture that someone posted, leaving out the Xbox Series S and PlayStation 5 versions of the game and only comparing the Switch 2 and the PlayStation 4. And this is Cyberpunk 2077 for the PlayStation 4 Pro and Switch 2. They left out the Xbox and PS5 versions of the pictures here. And they said that, hey, the Switch 2 version looks worse than the PS4 version, and they said that the textures were better on PS4. Basically, I think they were talking about the way this is designed here looks more fine here on PS4 Pro versus Switch 2's design of the textures. But if you look closely, the textures aren't even designed the same. It's not based on the same texture. They're actually different textures on Switch 2 versus the PS4 last gen version, which is further proof that this is based on the current gen version of Cyberpunk 2077. And if you look over here, the rock is different here. This little white rock's a little different. The texture on the coloration of the rocks down here is different as well on PS4. And this rock looks different, that rock's and the fine little like grassy, weed area here is kind of moved down this way. And up here, it's moved up that way on PS4. So this doesn't necessarily look better or worse. It just looks different again, right? But here's the funny thing. Since they left out the Xbox Series S and PS5 versions of the game, if you actually compare them, you'll see that the Xbox Series S version and PS5 version and Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk 2077 are all exactly the same type of design of textures. Which one looks better? Well, I think if you look closely, it's kind of obvious to me at least, but if you look close, you could see that the Xbox Series S version with its textures is the worst quality version of the three. I'm talking about Switch 2, Series S, and PS5. PS5, I think, probably looks the best. A little bit more fine detail here on these textures here, but it's the same design pattern. But the Switch 2 looks closer to the PS5 version than it does to the Xbox Series S. Xbox Series S looks like it's running on a much lower quality resolution texture for the same design than the Switch 2 or PS5. PS5 and Switch 2 look very close. You could almost can't even tell a difference. So I do think the little fine little details are slightly better on PS5 because it's running it at a very much higher resolution base wise. It's running it closer to 4K. It's like 1800p or something like that. Switch 2, as we know, is like 720p with DLSS, and you're getting that much fine detail on Switch 2 over Xbox Series S, which is running at like 1100p, 1200p range in quality mode. So that is why people took out these versions, is because that would show that the Switch 2 version looks better than the Xbox Series S. And no, we can't have that, guys. We can't have that. It's not possible. In their little worlds, you know, their heads will explode if Switch 2 looks better than Xbox Series S. That's just, you know, so they have to remove those and compare it to a last gen console, which looks different, spin the narrative and say that it looks worse, when in actuality it's just actually based on a different version of Cyberpunk 2077. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with here lately. Then I had another person that came on to our Phantom Liberty event that we had. We showed Phantom Liberty and Dogtown and everything. And you know, the game runs fine. Yeah, when you go down the with the truck here, the frame rate does drop a little bit, but this is all actually like pre-baked, almost on rails, this section of the game. The same cars will come out every single time in the same patterns, and there's nothing to do here gameplay wise. But yeah, the game is not running at a lock 30 frames here, but when you actually get into combat, when you go forward and get out of the truck and you start actually walking around, everything's fine. Everything runs at a, you know, pretty stable 30 frames per second here, even with all these NPCs and everything that you got to do here in this area. This is the part of the game that can't run on PS4 or Xbox One. This was made with next gen consoles in mind, or current gen consoles, and it came out in 2023. It's only 2 years old, Phantom Liberty, and it's running on Switch 2, and it's running pretty darn good considering. Now, I have the entire gameplay here up on my channel. You can check it out for yourself. It's in 4K. And the game actually tells you to avoid this scene. Songbird, one of the characters, tells you to go around this area, that, you know, you will get shot and you'll die if you go in this area. But of course, we did it anyway because we want to see the combat, see how it performs on Switch 2. And as you can see, it performs great on Switch 2. We had no problems really whatsoever the entire time through, all the way through until we fought that boss. The big, amazing Chimera boss, like it's robot spider. A really impressive technical feat here being shown on Switch 2. Again, not possible on PS4 or Xbox One. It probably would have been running really poorly. Has all kinds of destructible environments, great physics, great lighting, awesome special effects and you know, particle effects, and just a lot of crazy stuff going on here. This is a perfect example of what the potential is for Switch 2, and this was a launch day game, and you're having something that looks as good as this. Again, not based on something from last gen, based on something that came out just 2 years ago on PS5, PC, and Xbox Series X. This is a fantastic example of where we're headed with Switch 2, and I couldn't be more excited, honestly. But speaking of Switch 2, we're going to switch over here. We're going to transition over to the actual console itself. I'm going to show you a few things that we found out about Switch 2 and its resolution and the HDR. It's things you need to be aware of to get the best experience for your Switch 2 and Cyberpunk 2077. These are things that I have actually found out myself in the last few days. And on launch day, I wasn't doing, you know, these things that I found out. So some of the maybe picture quality, even in my day one stream, may have been a little soft, or maybe not quite as vibrant as it should be, and I'll explain why. But let's move over to the Switch 2. All right, so here we are in the Switch 2. We're in Cyberpunk 2077, someplace in the city, and yeah, great game, of course. We're not going to play it really, but I wanted to show you something that I was discovered, and also people have been making me aware in the various things, like in comments and things like that, that the HDR in this system currently is not functioning properly. And I think they're right, because I have HDR turned off right now in the game, and it looks way more vibrant, brighter, and just a lot better and cleaner than it does in the HDR mode that it has. And that's because I have HDR turned off in the system menu, not in the game itself, but I have it turned off in the Switch 2 system menu. So if we look at this in the system settings here real quick, go to display, HDR output turned off, TV resolution is at 4K, and it has 1440p grayed out. Many people have said that they don't have this option available on Switch 2, and that for some reason it's not working. Nintendo's going to have to patch that in. And it's another reason why, actually, that I can't really use the M Classic cable with the Switch 2s, because the M Classic is based on the HDMI 1.4, and it not only can't upscale to 4K, but the max it can do is 1440p, and it can't do 120 Hz, and it can't do HDR. So the M Classic cable is completely, basically unusable, and you won't see any benefit from it using it with Switch 2 unless you set your games to 1080p just like Switch 1 and treat it like it's a Switch 1. What the M Classic and the 4K Gamer Pro will be good at for Switch 2 is playing games in backwards compatibility, at least for now. But I do think they're going to have to release a brand new version of the M Classic and the 4K Gamer Pro to actually work with 120 Hz displays and use HDR, because right now they're just not going to be compatible with any new games for Switch 2 to see any benefit from using them. But like I said, they will help with Switch 1 still. And the good news about Switch 2 is that running Switch 1 games in BC, backwards compatibility, is that they're locking the frame rates and they're raising the resolutions of those games that uses dynamic resolution. Like the games that dropped is like 600p or have like a 900p max, you know, like Crysis Remastered, I think, is a good example of that. That will now remain at 900p the entire time and be a locked 30 frames per second. And things like Metroid Prime Remastered, though, those that game doesn't benefit at all from using the actual upgraded 4K output of Switch 2. It's going to look great either way, and at least it'll have a locked 60 frames, but guess what? It already had a locked 60 frames. I'm hearing that Metroid Dread has slight, in performance improvements. There was a couple areas in that game where it did drop a few frames here and there. That's been smoothed out, and of course the loading times are way better. The loading times are faster in Metroid Prime Remastered as well too. We'll play that another time though. So, but getting back to the system menu. So I have HDR turned off, and you go to the docked output information. It says it's running in 4K, 60 Hertz, which is why I'm able to capture this in 4K on my 4K capture card, and then I can post 4K pictures, is because the game is being captured in 4K. Games like Cyberpunk, for example. Yes, we know it's not being rendered at 4K, but when the game is being output at that resolution, because it's designed for a console that can output at 4K, guess what? It looks better than it would being rendered or output at 1080p, because that's just how it works. So regardless of what people say online, oh, you're posting 4K pictures, but that is not 4K. And like, yeah, I know that, but it's being output at 4K. And the actual upscale that it's doing naturally looks really good, and it makes games like Cyberpunk look really good. But yeah, if we turn HDR on, you can do for all software, compatible software. I haven't noticed any difference, but we'll just say for compatible software, and it'll blink, and now it looks worse actually. So it looks more dulled, and that applies to not only my capture but also my screen, my monitor itself, my 4K display. The image looks less sharp and it looks less vibrant. The colors don't pop as well, and I think this is actually how I was playing it up until now. It looks good still, but the colors are being like, or the colors are kind of washed out, or kind of washed together. You can see that they don't separate as well. And on top of that, for some reason, when I had HDR turned on, when the game was auto-saving, I was getting some popping noises from the audio. Now it happened every once in a while, but then when I turn HDR off and just played it like that, I have gotten no audio glitches whatsoever anymore. So there's something wrong with the HDR, I think, in this game, or possibly for the Switch 2, obviously in general. I don't think the HDR is working correctly right now, because I should be seeing a difference, and I'm not really seeing a difference. And I thought, hey, maybe I'm just not noticing it or something, but honestly, people have been saying that HDR simply just doesn't work properly, and Nintendo needs to patch it. And they also need to patch the 120 hertz to work a little bit better. It's kind of like iffy on how it works. It doesn't really explain itself very well, and I'll show you why. We're playing Cyberpunk 2077 here, and I didn't change anything in the game, right? I saw that. I didn't change any settings, but we'll go back and I'll show you real quick, just to show you what I mean. Go to settings. Right now, I'm playing this. In the game, I have HDR turned on, but if I turn it off in the system menu, it doesn't matter. So in the game, HDR is turned on, graphics modes and quality modes, it's grayed out, and it's only quality mode because I don't have 120 hertz selected. Now, go back to system menu or system settings, and we'll turn 120 hertz on. And I'll show you something kind of weird that happens here. 120 hertz is turned on. All right. Now we'll go back to the game. It still says HDR is on and quality mode is on. But if you recall, Nintendo said that you can't use 120 hertz when the console is outputting at 4K. You can only do it when it's doing 1080p and 1440p. So why am I able to have 120 hertz turned on and still play the game with quality mode on without changing any of my display settings on, the Switch 2? I still had it set to 4K, right? Go down here, display, go to dock output information, and look at that. Switch 2 is actually running the game now in 1440p with HDR on at 120 refresh rate, 120 hertz. So that means that I'm actually playing this game with 1440p output. It only does so when I choose 120 hertz. It automatically chooses 1440p as my output for Cyberpunk 2077. So that's very odd, and I would prefer that they gave you an option to just have 1440p 60 hertz if you want, but again, they don't do that. So I'm going to turn off HDR, and then I'm going to turn off 120 hertz, and it's going to give me a better picture. I'll go back into the game, still set to quality mode. Ooh, wow. Yeah, I've been looking forward to playing a game like that on a Nintendo console for a long time, and we got it, and it's a fantastic port. I highly suggest you buy it if you are into sci-fi or first-person adventures or role-playing games. I highly suggest that you pick this game up. It's a really great game. It's at least about a 9 out of 10 now after all the fixes they had done with the game and everything over the years. Great game. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video though. If you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. And I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.